Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Despite a solid start to the season, there is more drama at Real Madrid. Vinicius Junior has told the club he doesn't want to renew his contract, while his relationship with head coach Xabi Alonso remains strained. So, who's winning this battle? All right, with us today, we've got our Real Madrid correspondent, Mario Cortegana. We've got Dermot, Corrigan. We've also got Jack Lang with us as well. All right, Mario, take us back a little bit to the beginning. When the friction between Vinicius and Alonso actually started.
Yeah, we should go back really at the Club World Cup, almost at the beginning of the Alonso era, because the coach had planned to bench Vinicius in the Club World Cup semi-final against Paris Saint-Germain. Trent Alexander-Arnold's injury prevented that, but Vinicius was aware about his coach plan. So the start wasn't the best for them, and then you just have to take a look to the statistics. He has been benched 4 times, something that it's really unusual, not just for Vinicius, but for any star in the world of football, and he has just finished 5 out of 17 games played for Real Madrid this season. So this is the current situation, which is far from ideal.
Yeah, I mean, he was also benched for the Elche game as well. But talk to us about his current contract situation. What is the latest with that?
Well, the latest is that meeting with President Florentino Perez. We revealed before earlier this week. There was this crazy situation in El Clásico. After that, Vinicius went to see and to meet Florentino Perez to apologize and to talk to the president. And in this meeting, they talk about the renewal. The situation is stalled. There is no progress since some time, and Vinicius told the president that he was feeling like extending under the current scenario wouldn't be the best for him at this point. So as long as the relationship, this lack of feeling with his coach remains like this, it would be difficult for him to accept. Beyond that, there is a big gap in terms of money as well.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Alan? Because I'm only asking this because Vinicius has been such an important player for Real Madrid, a player that, let's not forget, not too long ago was one of the top players to potentially win the Ballon d'Or. What a phenomenal season that was for him.
1 year ago.
1 year ago, exactly. I mean, can this relationship be repaired? Because you'd like to think if they can get the best out of this star, this player, Madrid could actually end up doing great things this season.
It's difficult because both parties feel that they are right. I mean, Alonso are fully convinced that he's doing the best for the team. So if he thinks that Vinicius could work better for the team from the bench, as happened as he thought for the Elche game last weekend, he did that, and he will keep doing that. And Vinicius feels that he has been in the last years one of the main football players in Europe and in the world. So he thinks and he feels that he should be treated like, for example, Mbappe, meaning he should be always a starter. I'm not optimistic at this point about them, but let's see if maybe good results, Vini coming back to his real level, because he has been awful in terms of football lately. Let's see if that could help.
Okay, Mario, I know you have to go. Plenty more news. I know Real Madrid are top of La Liga at the moment, but always drama, man. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You know what's strange here, Jack? I can't help but compare this to Neymar at Barcelona. Another Brazilian player playing out wide who I guess never quite felt like he could be the main man. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, certainly. Like Neymar waiting for his chance. And when the baton was due to be passed, it was not there for him because Messi kept signing on. And there is a perhaps, parallel dynamic happening at Madrid now, that obviously Vinicius is used to being a star in a team of stars to some degree. It will always be like that at the top clubs, but he was a protagonist, I think, especially when Mbappe struggled in his early days at Madrid. I think that was probably a position of real comfort for Vinicius. I've been here a bit longer. I'm already in my flow. This guy's come in and, perhaps isn't outshining me to the degree that everyone thought he would. It's an interesting one because there is a little bit of this in the national team as well, in that people have been waiting for the Brazil national team to become Vinicius's team, and it hasn't quite happened so far. I mean, there's been so much overlap again with Neymar. Like, Neymar is pretty much out of the picture now, but until maybe a year ago, even when Neymar was always injured and playing in Saudi Arabia, there was still this sense that he was the overriding character in this team. And Vinicius has flickered for Brazil. His goal record isn't great. I think it's 8 in 45. He's never really consistently produced for Brazil the performances that he has done for Madrid in previous years. So it's an interesting situation. What I will say is that I think the situation as it is at club level could massively set a fire under him for his national team. So I think this whole situation, I don't think Carlo Ancelotti will be too disappointed in it, because if Vinicius is feeling that he has a point to prove, I think that's often quite a good thing ahead of a big tournament.
Yeah. What do Madristas feel about this, Dermot? Because this is a player that has brought that fan base a lot of joy over the years.
Yeah, Vinicius he's had a strange kind of roller coaster relationship with Madrid's fans. When he came into the team first, he was kind of seen as a little bit of a figure of fun. He didn't settle in very well at the start, missed some chances, was always a guy he was always a guy who had clearly, very fast, really good tricks, but he didn't have that much end product. Then when Ancelotti came in as coach, Ancelotti did really well about building his confidence, helping him to become a better finisher, putting him into the positions on the pitch which suited his game, that made him look really good. And then Vinicius was well loved by Madrid fans, but he never had that kind of superstar status of, a Messi or a Ronaldo. He was a guy who scored a winning goal in Champions League final, which is great. He was kind of the guy who was in position to win the Ballon d'Or because there wasn't another really big, huge attacker in the team. Benzema had already won it. Benzema then moved on to Saudi Arabia. There was a feeling that Vinicius was kind of next in line, but he was never the overwhelming big star in the team. On Alonso's side, there was a lot of goodwill around Alonso when he came in last summer. He's a former player, won the Champions League, a really respected guy around Madrid. And there was a feeling that after Ancelotti was maybe a little bit too easygoing on the superstars, on Vinicius, on Bellingham, other guys within the team. And when Alonso came in, the idea, and this came right from the top of the club as well, that, we're going to put in a bit more discipline. We're going to be tougher on them. We're going to ask more of the stars, make them be less individual and play more into a team ethic. That has had ups and downs under Alonso. They got hammered in against Atletico Madrid in the derby, which wasn't good, but then they beat Barca in the Clásico, which was good. So I'd say generally the fans are more or less on Alonso's side, still waiting to see what happens over the rest of the season. But it's not a case that everybody is howling at Alonso to get Vinicius back into the team. It's not even a case that he's not in the team that much. He's rested for a few games, he's rotated for a few games, but when the biggest games come around, he has started them. So there's a bit of because it's Madrid, it's a goldfish bowl, so much, everything is just such a big drama and crisis. It's so entertaining, to be around it and to follow it. But the fans just want the team to win games, as I said, many times before, and the jury's still out on Alonso, so we'll have to see.
Okay. Well, let's move on, because let's talk about Vini and Brazil, as it's a World Cup year. Now, he played the full 90 minutes in a recent friendly against Tunisia, and also against Senegal as well. Jack, this is your specialist subject. We've spoken about Vini and Alonso. What's his relationship like with Carlo Ancelotti? Of course, he's former boss at Real Madrid.
He seems to be pretty much at ease in the Brazil setup at the moment. There is a sense that Ancelotti, through having a more laissez-faire approach, does suit this Brazil team. Like, they've got a lot of players who need a little bit of leeway, whether that's tactical or, in terms of interpersonal relationships. Ancelotti knows a lot of them well, not just Vinicius, but obviously Rodrigo, Casemiro, Militão, the defender. He has these relationships. And before Ancelotti came, there was a real kind of a player's lobby really behind the scenes. Like, we want this guy. We think this guy is good for us. So there is definitely a feeling of goodwill through the squad. I think that applies to Vinicius too. Ancelotti has started to tweak Brazil's tactics a bit, and in a way that I think is interesting for Vinicius. So previously, Vinicius always played on the left for Brazil. And increasingly, as the best players are, he would be double marked. And he would often, I've watched Brazil countless times in the last 3-4 years. I was at the Copa America 2 summers ago in the States, and watching Vinicius there was a very frustrating experience probably for him as well, because he was just waiting. He was waiting for the ball out on the touchline. And when he got it, there were 2-3 guys there. And occasionally he broke through, but a lot of the time he was unable to. He didn't also have the kind of passing triangles that he may have had at club level. Brazil have been a bit of a lot of a dumpster fire for the last years. So that makes things complicated. But I remember a game in that Copa America against Costa Rica. Brazil really needed a goal. And the manager at the time, Dorival Junior, took Vinicius off with 20 minutes left. And the camera in the stadium cut to Neymar, who was injured, but watching from the stands. And he made a very kind of public, I'm sure he knew it was on the screen. He was like, Vinicius, what? And this kind of kicked up a little debate in Brazil about, obviously you need a goal, you kind of want to keep Vinicius on, but there was also that feeling, as I mentioned earlier, that he hadn't really made the team his own. The next game, he scored twice against Paraguay, which was probably his best performance for Brazil. But since then, again, form comes, form goes. With Ancelotti has tried to get him, I think, in more central areas. So the last 4 or 5 games, Vinicius has kind of been the central striker with license to roam. So Ancelotti has played a more disciplined player towards the left of the attack. So it was Rodrigo against Senegal. It was previous games. Martinelli has been used there, someone who can stretch the game, but also has the tactical discipline to come back and just basically allow Vinicius just to stay up. And that has worked. The early signs under Ancelotti are pretty positive, but with Brazil, peril is only ever 45 minutes of bad football away.
I'm just thinking as we're talking right now that is there a worry, maybe not for country, but for club football, that we potentially see a player based on all this drama that actually, dare I say it, is so disillusioned with that system. We don't fully see him flourish at Real Madrid. We don't see him fully flourish at that stage of European football, that perhaps he ends up going to Saudi Arabia and then that's it for Vinny.
There are plenty of examples, aren't there, of players who burn really brightly and
that's what I was thinking.
Perhaps don't go as deep in their career as we think. Apologies for repeatedly coming back to him, but like the Neymar example is right there, isn't it? Because this was someone whose career to some degree was led by his own sense of his self-worth. Neymar is an example of one of those players who I think self-worth was justified. I think Neymar it probably isn't anymore, but I still cling on to the odd clip. Was a player who was justified in that belief, but undoubtedly let his ego lead him from Barcelona to Paris. Whether you see that as like a complete negative, as most people did, I thought there was a degree of bravery to it as well, thinking, striking out on his own. And now, in hindsight, it doesn't look like the right decision. And then obviously to Saudi Arabia and back in Brazil now, walking around the pitch, moaning at his colleagues, in general, seen as laughing stock would be a a very harsh way of putting it, but like his reputation has faded incredibly quickly since he's gone back to Brazil. Vinicius, I think in terms of like, you know, he looks incredibly fit. He looks after himself well. I don't see him as someone who will kind of succumb to temptation necessarily, but yeah, I think maybe the feeling of, I don't know, disillusionment, I think, is there somewhere in him. A lot of that is, of course, justified because of the racism stuff. Like, you know, that would be enough to put anyone off playing football at the highest level in Spain or wherever that occurred. And I think you definitely have to factor the energy that saps both the abuse itself and the extent to which he has been willing to speak out about it and, you know, actually make an issue of it, which I think is to his enormous credit. But that does sap energy, doesn't it? And it takes away from your focus, perhaps sometimes. But yeah, I think the combination of those things do I expect to see him in a top European league at like 31, 32? It's a great question. I hope so, because I think he has developing to do. I think he's not at the peak of his powers for me. I think if he can add nuances to his game, I think he can become a better player than he is now. And I hope he sees that. I think, this Alonso situation is troubling from that perspective. And, you know, I think it's tough to watch when the first sign of, you know, a battle for his position or having to prove himself, his reaction is maybe not what we would hope for in terms of kind of seeing it as a challenge rather than a slight on his ability.
Let's talk about the drama and the tension as we started off at the top of the show. Our colleague Guillermo Rai has written about this on The Athletic, and he's spoken to sources to talk about pessimism. And also someone said the team is a disaster. Dermot, is it that bad?
Madrid is hilarious sometimes, and everything is super magnified. They haven't been playing well, and Alonso is having some problems trying to implement the system that he wants to play. He's come in to try to replicate more or less what he did at Leverkusen. The type of front foot football, really intense, lots of pressing, lots of organisation, and some of the players haven't fit in well within that system. Vinicius we've talked about, but others as well, Fede Valverde, Rodrigo, even Bellingham, you know, there was still not quite sure exactly how he fits within it. And because it's Madrid, because it's the goldfish bowl that it is, people around the players talk, the guys, Gia and Mario have really good sources as well. So there is that feeling. Disaster is maybe a little bit strong, but there's a feeling that it's not going great. They weren't great at Elche at the weekend. They weren't great at Liverpool when they got beaten, but they're still top of the table, still a long way to go. And it's not uncommon at Madrid for the autumn time to be a little bit shaky, for there to be some dodgy results. And it all really depends on how things click, or whether they click, and how it comes together around March, April next year. So yeah, it's a surreal situation to an extent, because they are top of the league and people are talking about how bad it is. The team haven't been playing that well, but there's lots of time to turn it around. And Alonso himself keeps saying that this is a process, that it's going to take time, that he was hired and brought in to try and change things. As I said before, under Ancelotti, things had gone a bit stale. The way the team were playing, people were a bit upset that they were playing this counter-attacking football, especially in the bigger games. They want Madrid to dominate games. They want them to be modern, front foot forward, new progressive coach. All that thing sounds really good on paper. Then when you go into the dressing room and trying to get the players to play that way is more difficult, because it's Madrid, because there's so many egos involved. But I'm sure there'll be another story in another few weeks about different players who are unhappy about things are going. That kind of comes with the territory at Madrid. Alonso is aware of it, and we're just going to have to see how it works out.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, this is just a team that drama circulates around, and I wonder what it's like to actually play for Real Madrid and the pressure that's on your shoulders just to constantly win every season. Can you imagine?
It looks stressful enough covering them as a journalist. Like, I don't know how Dermot and Mario do it. Like, I'm surprised they ever have a full night's sleep. But yeah, it's a crazy club, and the thing I like about Madrid is that they know it's a crazy club. Like, you could easily envision like a club that is always in these stupid dramas, but is kind of quite self-serious. Madrid, they know it's nonsense and they love it. I got to respect that.
All right, before we wrap up, quick one, Dermot. Tell us about Florentino Perez's plans to change the club ownership model. I read this actually, and it's quite interesting in terms of bringing investment from external entities into the club. This would be the first time in its history.
Yeah, it's huge, really. It's a massive thing around Madrid. It's been floated for a while. Florentino kind of 12 months ago at the annual referendum of the socios, he said that they were going to plan a referendum for the future to bring in an investor into the club. It's still not clear exactly how they'll do it, but more and more details are coming out. I've been talking to a good few people around the club, people in the industry as well. And the idea is that they try to protect as much as possible the socio model that they have, that they're so proud of, that them and Barcelona and Athletic Bilbao and Osasuna have in Spain, which is really different. They're not a private company. They are owned by the members, but they're trying to find a legal way to do that and to allow big financial institutions or maybe even wealthy individuals to take a stake in the club, to take maybe 5% of the club, maybe 10% of the club. And that would involve a new, different type of a model in which the socios would become owners of the club. They would have a share which would have a financial worth, and they would still be able to vote for the president. In theory, they would still be able to control all the important decisions which are made at the club. But this financial investor would come in, which would pay maybe €1 billion, something like that, which the club would be able to use in order to pay off some of the stadium debts and maybe sign some new players as well. And that socio would then that financial socio would then be able to get a return on their investment. So they would get paid out of the revenues of the club as well. It's a huge move, and Florentino has kind of brought it in quietly. He doesn't want to have too much distrust against it or too many voices raised against it, and he's pretty good at controlling the conversation. So it looks like it's going to go ahead, but they still have to follow the process laid out in the club statute. So there'll be another assembly in the coming months at which they will give more details about what's going to happen, and then it will put to a referendum of Madrid socios. But it's a big deal, and Florentino is managing it really well, I think.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out on this, that's for sure. Madrid, of course, have Olympiacos next in the Champions League. Let's leave it there. Jack, appreciate your time. Dermot, and also Mario, who joined us earlier. And also thank you guys for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment as well. We'll catch you soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.